Hello everyone and welcome to another Top Tips for Archaeology graduates. Today I'm joined by Stephen. Hi Stephen, how are you?
Hello, I'm all right, thank you.
Well, thank you for joining us. Stephen is a project manager at Oxford Archaeology. So Stephen, perhaps you could tell us a little bit about your role as a project manager, what area of archaeology do you work in, and what are some of the things that you do on a day-to-day basis?
Right, okay, so I suppose as a commercial archaeology project manager, I deal with sites of all periods. We're based in Lancaster and we cover the north of England. So we work anywhere up from Nottinghamshire up to Scotland. We also work in Wales as well. But as Oxford Archaeology, our company operates across the whole country. In terms of so the projects, they can range from anything to desk-based assessments, evaluations, and excavations, and they can be anything from somebody's extension all the way up to major infrastructure projects. So the whole range, really.
Yeah. So what's it like being a project manager? How is your time broken down between, I guess, being on site and being in the office?
Sure. What's it like? Hell, no. No, it's not too bad. I mean, it is quite challenging. How do I divide up my time? It really depends on what sort of projects I'm managing. The one I'm doing at the moment is a large burial ground on a quite significant infrastructure project. And that's starting to wind down now, but while that was going on and in full swing, I'd be on site for a couple of days a week, so try and get all the meetings and health and safety stuff, talking to the staff, making sure everybody's happy, making sure everything's working okay in those couple of days. And then the other 3 days would be more sort of administration, finances, creating health and safety documents, liaising with other people, making sure that ordering bits in, make sure everybody's got accommodation and being fed and that sort of thing. So yeah, so it's quite varied, and lots of it's often quite reactive while the field work's going on. So things happen, lots of things happen that you know, as well as you try and plan something and you think you're very clever and you've got everything in hand, something that you never ever thought of comes in and creates various issues that you then got to sort out, which sort of kiboshes any timetable and things like that you had in mind. But I suppose that makes it interesting, doesn't it? You don't have to, you know, you don't end up doing the same thing every day, every week. So, yes.
Yeah. What are some of the things that you enjoy about it then? Is it that variability that you have lots of different tasks?
I suppose it is. I suppose it is partly the challenges. It's partly, I mean, as much as anything, it's the people I get to work with. You know, lots of interesting people. Sort of, it's nice to, as part of the role, be able to go around the team and talk to lots and lots of people. And you know, obviously with 80 or 90 people, you don't get to know them too well. You don't get to find out exactly what makes them tick, but you do get to know them a little bit and see how they're getting on, see how they're enjoying their work. Very occasionally you can give them pointers and things. Very often you get to learn more from them than they ever, you know, that I ever get to teach them. So yeah, so as much it's the people, I think. And then I suppose working with our clients, again, there's a lot to be learned from them, seeing how they work. So yeah, it's important that you're still learning through whatever you do, and you've got to be open-minded. So.
Yeah, that's it. And that kind of sense that it's lifelong learning, that even though you might have finished your degree, there's still loads to learn and you're always learning, I think is something that people have echoed across all of these interviews in many different areas.
Right.
Can I ask what you feel is more challenging about the role of project manager then?
I think it's well, I suppose it's the fact that you have to be responsible for everything. So you have to be responsible for health and safety, so people's well-being and things, making sure they're kitted out in the right clothes, making sure that they're wearing them the right way, that they're always wearing their gloves, always wearing their safety specs, got their sleeves rolled down, all the other things. And then so fitting in with what the client expects of us for health and safety as well, as much as what we would rather wear or wear our clothes. There's the paperwork that goes with that, the environmental things, the paperwork that goes with those aspects, then taking responsibility for the financial side of things, and trying to do that in a way, because not all clients like it done the same way. So coming up with different ways of, well, not different ways of balancing the books, that's fraud, but different ways of presenting the data and things, and making sure that they do work and things. And making sure that all these things that look great in theory, and you spent lots of time planning, making sure they actually work practically as well. So that sort of link between the theory and the practice is often quite challenging. And then on top of that, trying to do things archaeologically, finding sort of archaeological and historical context to what you're doing, because inevitably you end up working on projects of all dates, and you can't be a prehistorian and a sort of rock breakers or whatever you call the flint things, and be interested in that, and Roman pottery bloke, and know about medieval stuff and know about post-medieval stuff, and then and then even blimey going up to the 1950s. So sometimes it's hard to even care about something, know about it and be interested. So should I said that? I don't know. So the breadth can be challenging, and then particularly as your clients expect you to, or think that you might know all about it, and of course trying to get them to care about it as well, and get them to care about some of the things when they're very focused on, understandably, what they need to do, i.e. they got to build their thing, they want us out the way, and they want us out the way by a certain amount of time. So I suppose, again, it's when the theory and the reality don't quite match up. So the idea that something might take 3 weeks and then you find more, and it's you need a bit longer, or you need a bit longer and you can't quite explain why you need a bit longer. Those are the hardest things.
Yeah.
So in some ways, it's working with the people that is both the best and the most challenging bits, I suppose.
Yeah, I found in quite a few of these interviews, what has been the most exciting and enjoyable parts have often then people have gone, actually that's also the most challenging parts. And I think high risk, high reward, and especially when you're taking on that responsibility for a lot of people, I can see why that is something that perhaps is something that you want to get right. So it's the stuff that you find challenging because you want for it to go well.
You want to do your best and you want to get the right results, because both with our existing staff and with our clients, those relationships are what carries things through. If things start to break down, then and people lose trust or lose faith, then you lose your team and potentially lose your clients as well. So
yeah. Can I then move on and ask how you went about getting into this position? So a project manager is quite senior in the commercial archaeological world, so you will have had several steps to get there. How did you go? What's your personal story from your undergraduate studies through to your current position? Okay,
I suppose when I did my undergraduate things, I was quite interested in the science side of things, so I'd sort of done science A levels. So I was interested in animal bones and human bones and things like that. So I ended up doing the more science-based modules during my undergrad. At postgrad, I did a master's in human paleoecology, which was, I suppose, a whole range of things, looking at animal bones, human bones, plant bits, insects and things. I was very lucky because I was the only person on my course. I had,
things have changed.
yeah. So
Yeah.
it was I had sort of one-on-one tuition, so that was nice. No excuses there either, mind you. But
Yeah.
so I was very lucky there. And then after doing my masters, I did well, for the master dissertation I did it on some animal bones from a castle that the university had dug up in Wales. And then that led on to me, or perhaps influenced me, going to the environmental archaeology unit, which was then in the biology department at the university. And I worked there for a few years, sometimes looking at animal bones, more often than not just washing dirt, which is the main thing, doing flotation and things like that, and sometimes sorting insects and things. And that was an enjoyable, simple life. And and unfortunately, they had to move. They moved out of the university and went sort of freelance. And although I did a bit of work for them once they were freelance, I ended up then working for a local field unit, again, field archaeology specialists who at that time inhabited the Undercroft under King's Manor. So I worked for them for a few years as their sort of environmental person, still washing dirt and looking at some of their animals. I didn't look at any of their people because Marlin did their people. So did that for a few years, and then I thought I'd try my luck when I saw a project manager's post being advertised. Even though I had no experience, no real skills in that direction. I mean, I'd written a lot of reports for the environmental things, and I'd done a bit of digging, but frankly, I wouldn't trust me to do anything like that. Or so I tried my luck, got interviewed. The interviews seemed to go well, I suppose, and they agreed to take me on as a trainee manager. And there was a trainee for about the first year or 18 months, gradually sort of learning how to, a bit more about archaeology, running small projects, little desk-based assessments, watching briefs, trial trench evaluations, gradually building up. It was quite eye-opening, a lot of it, learning how to deal with money, edit other people's work, organize things, sort of overcoming my natural lack of organization and things. Yes. Learning to get shouted at and things by angry clients and things. But all of these things really you just have to learn on the job, and quite frankly you can only learn from your mistakes, because when things go well you don't quite know what you've done right. So fortunately I made lots of mistakes and learned lots of things. So so there was that for about a year or so, and then gradually projects will start to get bigger, and I suppose my first substantial project was excavation of some burials in South Shields, which was supposed to start off small. We were only supposed to have about a dozen skeletons, and because it was at the edge of the cemetery, and it had been evaluated, but they'd only tested a few of the grades. And when Oxford got to do the excavation there, and it was a short trench anyway because there was a lot of overburden to remove, but we ended up rather than a dozen, everything kept going down and down and down, and we found about 240 skeletons, I think.
Oh my goodness.
And they went down about 4 or 5 meters, and it was quite interesting. There were as well as the burials from the churchyard itself. Below that there was it predated the actual expansion of the cemetery. The cemetery had been expanded into the area, but there were still burials there, and there were lots of babies that had been buried just outside the churchyard on the edge of the banks of a creek. which had then actually just by chance got incorporated when the cemetery was expanded. So yes, I mean that was quite interesting, quite challenging, and dealing with I don't know, I suppose in some ways a completely bemused and I suppose a slightly broken client when they realised that the scope of work had increased 2,000-fold, and that we were still there after many months, but because it was such a small area, we couldn't fit many more people in, or any more people. So yeah, that was probably a very formative project for me, and I was very lucky that when you're dealing with human remains, people don't tend to ask, so well, they just accept that you've got to do what you've got to do. You know, it's not like they query the importance of a bunch of post holes or something, or burnt rocks or things like that, which, you know, we all know is really important, but you know, to them, yeah. Whereas with skeletons, they can relate to them. So.
That's a really fascinating journey. Thank you for talking us through that. You said at one point that, oh, I didn't have any skills, but I don't agree with you at all. So working in environmental archaeology, you're still writing reports up, and I think that it's also interesting to really note that you made a step from perhaps a more sort of post-excavation role into a project manager position, and you would have taken post-excavation skills into that. And I think
and I think it was more those post-excavation things that they were perhaps interested in at that time. So
yeah, it's a good journey, and you were certainly lucky to be based in the Undercroft for a while. The King's Manor is a lovely place. We feel very lucky to be based in King's Manor. Yeah. Can I ask? So you stayed in archaeology, so obviously you draw on the skills that you got during your degrees a lot. What do you think is special about studying archaeology? What are the kind of things that you look back on and you think, I'm so glad that I developed that skill during my degrees?
I suppose it's the breadth of learning and the breadth of sources, and the integration of all the different facets of the different disciplines. So it's not just it's not just the environmental stuff, it's not just the stratigraphy, it's not just the historical side, it's the pulling the things together. And everything I try and strive for when I'm doing the post-ex things is to emphasize the importance of that integration, so that nothing exists in isolation. And if you only look at things in isolation, actually they're not nearly as important as they could be when you pull them together with the other side of things. So the site I'm doing at the moment, you know, we want to, obviously osteologically it's important, but if you can add in the burial context, if you can add in the finds, the coffin fittings, and the historical information, then you can make it so much more significant than it is just as a collection of osteological data. You can also make it so much more accessible to people, you know, to the lay audience, the people that aren't archaeologists. You can, you know, talk about various incidents within the history of the town, and relate it to individuals or sorts of burials that you found, and just make it that bit more approachable and touch people more widely with it, I suppose.
It's a really interesting response. Thank you. I think sometimes we overlook the challenge and the skill that's involved that archaeologists develop through bringing together different types of evidence. And I think it's a really useful skill together, that you have to work how two very disparate sets, as you said, you could be looking at coffin furniture and then health data, and bringing those two very different data sets together. I think that is how you think about how you do that, is actually a really valuable skill for all sorts of different contexts. Can I then finally ask you, what are your top tips if people are watching this and thinking, I'd really love to be a project manager, I'd love to work in the commercial world? What kind of advice would you give to someone graduating today?
Yeah, I suppose it's to be open-minded and to be humble, and know that you've got to learn so much from everybody around you, and that's from everybody on the digging team, on all your staff. Everybody has got something to teach you, all the way to your clients, to you know, your executives above you and things like that. They've all got things to teach you, so always be receptive to learning. Always try and keep reading around things. Always be accessible, both to your staff and to your clients. You know, there's no point in putting on airs and graces and things. You know, try and be yourself, try and be friendly, because actually, you know, it's good to be good at something, it's good to be efficient, it's good to be proficient, but I think it's also important to be human. And you know, relationships are based on a lot of your human skills and talents, or you know, just your natural abilities, as much as they are as to whether your spreadsheet adds up to the nearest penny or whatever, or you know, I think you get an easier ride, to be honest, if you can be flexible and kind, and you know, treat everybody equally. It's just easier to get good relationships that way, because you know, as a manager, I rely on everybody around me, probably rather more than they rely on me. So yeah.
I think that advice is fantastic, and something that some people have alluded to but haven't really said in such an articulate way, in that you're working in a community and being part of that community by being kind and open to what everyone has to teach you is actually a really effective way of developing both your own career, but also opening up that community to accept people from all over, and being able to do that really good work. Thank you so much, Stephen, for taking the time to talk to us this lunchtime. Right. Thank you, everyone out there, for watching. Join us again next time for more top tips for archaeology graduates.